What's up, guys? Last DayZ Mods here, and finally back to finish this deathmatch um, mod server, or server mod rather. I apologize for the long delay in between videos, but hey, sometimes life happens, and so hopefully we can get this all wrapped up here in one video. So again, this is part 2 of our how to create a deathmatch server. And we started a Gorka deathmatch server, and in the last video we learned how to basically single out the town of Gorka and remove all the other buildings from the central loot economy, so that there is only loot spawning in our buildings in Gorka. So let's pick up where we left off. Let's dive in here. And again, we have our vanilla version that we have backed up. So we have a fresh copy there, and then we have our modified version. Now, for the sake of time, I have already completed each of these tasks, so we can move through this much quicker. Okay. So I've got a file here with completed, so I'll be referencing that quite a bit. That's my completed version. So the last two that we modded were the map group proto and the map group positions. And again, this is all of our buildings in Gorka, so you should have a file that looks like this. And then over in our map group proto or map group prototypes, we have only the Gorka buildings, and we have eliminated all of the other buildings. So now what we need to do is we need to link those with our loot. Now, the other thing that I don't think we covered in the last video, we need to now select the loot that we're going to spawn into the game. So, a couple different ways to do this. And what I like to do is now I've already done this, so let me do this with a fresh copy here, and I'm just gonna show you a quick way to do this, because what we need to do is we need to zero out all of our loot, okay, so that there is so all of our loot is spawning 0, because in a deathmatch server you only want specific items, like you want your higher tier guns, or whatever you're going for. Like for instance, I have a deathmatch server that is just repeaters and carbines. It's a Western style server, so I only want those 3 guns. I don't want any other guns spawning into the game, so I want to go and zero out all of that. Now, rather than going through item by item and zeroing those out, there's an easier way to do this. So we're going to take our types file, and we're going to open up a website that we often use. This is the DayZ Standalone server modifier or server customizer, and we use this quite a bit. Here we go. And so DayZ Standalone server customizer. So we're going to take our types file, our vanilla types file, we're going to drop it in there, let it load up. And now this is going to make things very easy for us. So you see up here we've got maximum and minimum. So that's our nominal number and our minimum number. And you'll see these are the vanilla selections here. So all we need to do is just click this down arrow, and you see that zeroes out all of those sections. And it even went ahead and zeroed out our minimum, because if the nominal is at 0, the minimum should be at 0. Okay. Now the other thing we want to do is we want, in a deathmatch server, you want items respawning at a very high rate, because if you've got a massive amount of players running around fighting one another, if the restock timer, which is this selection here, is set too high, people are going to be sitting there waiting for guns to kick back into the game, and you don't want that, because they'll leave your server and go find another deathmatch server. So we want this restock timer, and this, again, this number is the amount in seconds of how long the game will wait to start spawning back in that item into the central loot economy. So we want that number to be at 0 for all of our items. So we're just going to click down for that. Okay, so now we've got all of our loot zeroed out, and now we've got our restock timer to 0. The other thing here is the lifetime timer. Now this number here represents in seconds how long an item is going to sit on the map if untouched by a player before it spawns away and a new item spawns in its place. We want that to be kind of low as well on a deathmatch server, because we want that loot kind of cycling around, bouncing back and forth between the buildings and moving around a bit, so that every time you run into a building, there's a high likelihood that there's different items in there, different guns or such. So we want to bring that down to, I usually default this to about 300, but using this tool, you can't really get it to 300 exact. So we'll go with, yeah, we'll go up one. So some of these are at 225, 450. So that's about right. So now we'll go ahead and we'll save this file, and this is going to be the file that we are working off of for our deathmatch server. So again, quick recap. What we've done is we have just simply zeroed out all of our items, and then we have save that, and we have, oh, yes, we do want to replace that, and we have lowered our restock timer to 0, and then lowered the lifetime a bit, and now we are ready to move on. We can go ahead and close that. And again, I have already done this, but essentially what we're going to want to do is, I showed you in the last video how to make those custom tags. We're going to want to make a Gorka Deathmatch tab here, and what we're going to be doing is cutting and pasting the items that we want to appear in our deathmatch in between these tabs. Okay, and again, I've already done this, so we'll skip over to that file here in a moment. Oops, I forgot that D in there, didn't I? Okay, so now we've created a custom section here, and so we're going to organize this. But what we want to do is we want to go through and we're going to find our guns and our items, and we're going to, so we'll have an AK-101 in there. This is very important. Hear me when I say this. When we move the item from here to here, you have to cut it out. You cannot have two of the same item, two instances of the same item in the types file, otherwise they will not spawn in. So we're going to cut and paste. Okay, very important. Remember that you cut and paste, not copy and paste. All right, so we've got our AK-101. We're going to do some other guns in there. So let me pop over to my finished version here. And no, we don't want to save that. Let me show you the completed version. Or rather, this is the one that I was working off of earlier. Okay, so I've gone a step further here and added an extra tab for each item just to further organize this. So I put weapons. We've got an FX45, AK-101, FAL, M4, and then we've got a Winchester or a Tundra. Now this is a cool little trick here. Black. So this is going to spawn in a black Tundra, and we do that just by adding this little underscore black. Now you can add, there are two variants you can add here for the Tundra. You can add a black or a green, and so this will spawn in black Tundras. There's going to be one other step. We're going to get to that in just a moment. So I've added that, and then you want to add the appropriate ammo and mags for each of these. And then clothing, I've added some gloves, all of the Gorka clothing. And then just like the Tundra, check this out down here, the Gorka helmet. That's the assault helmet that we're all used to seeing. And notice that if you put that underscore black, that's actually going to spawn those in the black variant. So pretty cool. And then, of course, we want the visor. And then I've also added some food and meds categories, so bandages. This is kind of a cool little trick here, the saline bag IV. I'll show you how we get that to spawn into the game. And then we've added some food. And then for miscellaneous, we've got some fun little traps. Okay. And so I've added all of those in and done that already. Your selection may be different. You might want different guns spawning in. Now, here's something to keep in mind. You do not need to add the components to the gun. The scopes, you don't need to add that. I'm going to show you how we get those to spawn in here in a bit. So again, yours may be different. You don't have to do the items that I did. You could, rather than Gorka, you could put whatever kind of clothing you want. Maybe you want the BDU, maybe you want hunter's clothing. That's totally up to you. So that's why I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here, because this is going to vary depending on how you want your deathmatch server to look. I typically go with more weapons than this, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to go with these basic ones here. Now, another thing you need to know here with the mags, okay? And here's a hot tip for not only for your magazines, but for other items like your vitamins, water bottles, all of those things. They've got this thing here called Quant Min, Quant Max. And normally I've already done this, so you won't see it, but normally there's going to be an item like or a number like 5 here, and then maybe a 40 here. What that is that's a percentage of the maximum amount, which is 100, that the game will spawn in either a minimum amount. So if that number is 5, it's going to spawn in 5% of max capacity. If that quant max is set to 40, the maximum amount that will spawn in will be 40%. So for these mags for a death match, we want that all to be minimum of 100, maximum of 100. This way, all of our magazines will spawn in full. Okay, so all of our clips are going to spawn in full and fully loaded. Now, maybe you want a more hardcore style deathmatch and you don't want that. That's fine. You can leave that at vanilla. You don't have to do that. But this is how you get all of those magazines to spawn in full. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because there's a lot of other things to cover. This is pretty simple. This is literally just organizing. And again, you don't have to do it this way. You can just go in, find the file, find the gun that you want, and then edit it appropriately. You don't have to separate it the way I do. That's fine. So again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but this is how I organize a death match and get all of my guns and clothing and everything organized so that I can ignore all the stuff below, don't have to worry about it, and I can only focus on what I actually want spawning in the game. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, let's figure out how we connect this to our map group proto. So here's where it's going to get really dicey, okay? And I need you guys to follow along if you can, and try not to get frustrated. So we're going to be focusing on these two things here: category name and usage name, okay? Category name and usage name. Now, what those two lines do is they tell the game what building to spawn this weapon into, the FNX 45. Okay, and let me show you. Now, again, I've already done this, so bear in mind the tag or the usage was it military and then weapons. Now, in your map group proto, yours isn't going to look like this. Okay, I've already done this. Yours is going to say something like village or farm here in the usage name. And then down here in category, it's going to have like containers, other things. Okay, so let's just take a look at what that looks like without the completed version so you can see. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. So yeah, if we look here at, say, for instance, land container, usage name is coast. So that's going to be coastal loot. And then category name is going to be tools, containers, clothes, weapons, or explosive. What that means is, if you're on the coast and you come across one of these containers, these are like the shipping containers that you see down along the coast. Its usage name is going to spawn in any one of the types in the types file that has this usage name coast. It could spawn any one of those items, and then the category is either going to be tools, containers, clothes, weapons, so on and so forth. What this does for us is we can actually control now, using those tags, what specific types of items we want to spawn in here by lining up our usage and category names and changing them to match what's in the types. Okay, so we're going to be modifying those. So I hope I didn't lose you there. So let me show you a completed version so you kind of see what that looks like. Okay, now let's go into our types here. And again, so weapons FNX 45, we've got category weapons, usage name military. But then if we scroll down to our clothing, we've got usage name still military, but category is clothes. Okay. And then if we go down a little bit further, even, we've got military and explosives. Okay. For those. And then I did something different. I'm actually, let's not do that just yet. Yeah, we got military clothes for clothing. Okay, so let's get into my completed version. Okay, so now in our feed check, we've got a usage name of military. So that's always going to be the usage name on the top here, military. And then down here under category, I just simply put weapons. And what that means now is only weapons will spawn here at this little feed shack. So down at that container, remember this said coast before. I've changed it to say military. And then now down here where we had, containers and other things, I've put weapons and explosives. So now the only thing, oh my goodness, I've got a lot of things open down there. Oh, just close that. Bear with me, I need to close quite a few of these. Open this again. Okay, so now we've got weapons, military. So any one of these buildings that has a usage name of military and a category name of weapons, this FX45 now will spawn in one of those buildings when it goes to spawn into the game. Okay. All right. So what we need to do, and this is going to take you a long time. And while I was doing this, I had this revelation, if you will, like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this the hard way. So I'm going to show you a little bit faster way to do this. Now, typically you do deathmatch servers, like I said, at a military zone. So all of your buildings, they're already going to have a usage name military. You're not going to need to go in and change that because it already says military. And it's already going to have the military items in there. You're not going to need to make a lot of changes. The reason that we're going to have to do so many changes here is because we are spawning military loot at a coastal, or not a coastal, but at a town. Okay, so now we've got to change all of the tags on the buildings to now spawn in this military loot. So I've done it the long, hard way, and I just realized, like I said, you learn something new every day, that I could have made this a lot easier on myself, and I could have left all of it, because when we get down into the houses, let me show you. There we go. Okay, when we get down into the houses, you'll see these are still the Rex. Well, yeah, even in the Rex, you see it says village, 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 village. See, the usage name for almost all of these is village. Now, what we could have done is just erased industrial. So a faster way to do this, and you may want to pause the rest of the video here and do this, is instead of putting military here, I would put village there. Okay, so again, it depends on the deathmatch server. Most of the time, deathmatch servers are going to be done at military zones. So hopefully you can weed through the confusion here. But again, I just kind of had a revelation as I was doing this, like, man, I could have made this easier for myself. But at least we all learned something together. So at any rate, the bottom line is this: in order for these items to spawn into the buildings that we have selected, these tags have to match. That's what we're going for. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Regardless of what I put here, whether I put military or village, they have to match the way they appear in the types, and then the way they appear in the map group proto. They have to match. Okay, so again, regardless of whether or not it's industrial or village or whatever, as long as they match, those items will spawn into the according or into the appropriate buildings, as long as the category matches and the usage name matches. Now, we're going to do something extra, so let's put that on pause. And now we're going to create a custom tag, because what I like to do in my deathmatch servers is I like to, have like, um, not necessarily custom items, but items that wouldn't normally be together, like I guess medical and food. There's going to be one that has medical and one that has a food tag. Well, I want those all spawning in the same place usually, and usually it's a place where people are going to run to and kind of fight over. So I want to put my own tag on that, and let me show you. So this is the file we're going to use to do that, CFG limits definition. So we're going to open that up. Now, here's where we see the category and usage name. This is the file that basically defines for us in the game those tags that we just looked at, the categories. See, we've got them all here: tools, containers, clothes, vehicle parts, food, weapons, books, and explosives. Okay, and then we've got the usage flags. That's the usage, military, police. Now, see, I have created my own custom last DayZ mods. And as long as this is saved in here, the CFG limits definition, you can name this whatever you want. It doesn't have to be what I named it. You can name it whatever you want, because essentially it's telling the game to now look for this tag as well when spawning loot into the buildings. Okay, so you can create a custom tag for both category and usage. Just to simplify things, I've only done a usage one here, and now let me show you how I applied this. Okay, you don't have to do this route. You can just use the tags as they appear. For me, it just simplifies things. Let's see, so completed. Okay, yep. Okay, so let me show you where I've used the last DayZ mods tag. I used it in food and medical because that's where I typically do. Yeah, food and meds. Oh no. Oh, there we go. Oh, so I just didn't finish. Okay, so I added morphine, and then you see down here usage name. There's my usage name that I created, last DayZ mods, category name food. Well, that's weird. That's medical. Well, I typed in food, and I changed that because again, I want these all spawning into the same building, and I want to simplify it, right? So I've made this easier on myself so I don't have to add as many tags when I modify those buildings. Okay, so hopefully you're not losing me here. Um, so there's one I wanted to show you. There it is, saline bag IV. Okay, so you're going to see this come up quite a bit in types, and maybe you have already had this happen where you're trying to spawn in a custom item, something that doesn't normally spawn into the game, and you're like, well, it's in my types file, and I put a number in the nominal and a number in the minimum. Why isn't it spawning into the game? But if you look down here at the category name, it's only got a category name of tools. It's got no usage name. So it's not going to spawn into the game. And then sometimes, like with the witches' hoods, it'll say category name seasonal. Or with the leather clothing, you'll add numbers here, and you're like, I haven't seen it anywhere in the game. Well, that's because you need to give it a usage name. Essentially tell it where to spawn in at. Okay, so for us, we're going to just copy and paste this because we want it spawning at the same place. For category, and we're going to paste that there. And now this saline bag IV. So essentially, that's what it looks like when you the start kit IV and the saline bag, when you combine those and make the saline. So this way, players don't have, it's already ready to go. They can just plug it in, and if they're low on blood and they're trying to get back into the fight, they can just plug that in and go. And so we need to actually change this to bandages. There we go. All right, and then so for a hot tip for you, so if you are wanting to spawn in items that are not typically in the game, like the leather clothing, this is how you would do it. Say you want it spawning in at, just coastal towns. Under category name, you would put clothes, and then under usage name, you would put village or town, And again, you can find those in that CFG limits definition. If you don't know where to look or what tag to put, you would put clothes here for the leather clothing, or for, say, the witch hoods. And then for usage, whatever kind of building, let's say you want it spawning at military bases, you would put military, police, or whatever. So just use one of these. And then now when you put in a number in that nominal, your leather clothing or your other hidden items will spawn in. So hopefully that helps you. It's a little off topic. But then another side note here, is, let's say just on your server, you're not working on a deathmatch server, but you want military items spawning in at your towns, right? So that people can run into a house and just pick up a gun and fight, because you want one of those high loot servers where people are fighting constantly. Well, a couple different ways you can do that. You could go into your map group proto and you could find the houses, and under usage you would put military instead of village, and then now military loot is going to start spawning into those houses. Pretty cool, huh? Another thing you could do, obviously, is you could find the guns. Like for me, on one of my servers, I want specific guns. Some of the modified color guns, I have them spawning in at houses, so I've changed the tag names in that item in the types file to village and I think weapons, and now they spawn in at the houses. So two different ways to do that. So okay, so back on track here. So let's go back into our completed. So again, this is going to take a while. This is something that you're going to need to spend some time on here. So I'll show you the completed version because I've already done this. So we're going into our map group proto, and remember we tagged all these buildings. So all of the buildings that we have in our map group proto should only be buildings in the town of Gorka. And I have gone through and I have put usage name military and category name weapons. So weapons are going to spawn in here, military weapons. And then you have to decide, let me see if I can find it here, where you want your, like for instance, if you want, I have a deathmatch server where I've got top tier weapons spawning in at one particular building, and everybody has to like race to that building and kind of fight for the higher tier weapons. So you would maybe give a custom tag for those items and put it on those items, and then attach that custom tag to that building so they only spawn in that building. Hopefully that makes sense, and I'm not losing you here. So again, you have to decide what buildings you want the loot, certain types of loot, to spawn into. So for this one, I wanted weapons and explosives spawning into basically all of the houses, and then I wanted in like the workshops and the barns, I wanted the clothing to spawn there. Okay. So after people play on the server for a while, they realize, okay, I got to run to the barn to get clothes. And then at the hospital, or yeah, I guess it would be the hospital, at the store, and the police station, that's where I've got the medical supplies and food spawning in. Okay. And I've done all of that using these tags here, the category name and the usage name. Okay, so it's going to take you some time. You're going to have to go through and do this line by line for each building. Now, remember, I said I did this the long and hard way, didn't realize until it was too late. An easier way to do this is, rather than going through and changing all these to military, is leaving them at village if they are in fact at village. If you're doing it at a military base, if that's how you're doing your custom or your deathmatch server, they're most likely all going to say military anyways, so you just need to worry about the category names. Should be easier. So hopefully that makes sense. Way to check your work is just go through, check every building, and make sure that the only usage name you see is the usage name you have your items for the deathmatch listed under, and the only category will be those categories that you selected for your deathmatch server, and that should be on every single building. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. I know I'm rushing through this, but I mean, we've got a lot to cover here. So hopefully that makes sense. That's going to take you some time, but once it's done, it's done. Okay. And again, it all depends on where you select to do your deathmatch, right? Some buildings have, or some areas have less buildings, so it's less work involved. If you're going to do a death match at the Northwest Airfield, it's going to be pretty easy because all of those buildings already spawn all of that loot anyways. So you just got to decide what loot to spawn in. Okay, so yeah, it just depends, right? We're doing something a little more involved by spawning in military loot at a place where military loot doesn't usually spawn in, but hopefully you can learn some things here that will help you in other areas in modifying your servers. And so that's why I chose to do this. So again, location is everything. It's going to determine how much of this and how much time some of this is going to take you. Okay. So that's that portion of it. And hopefully that covers it. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. Now we need to cover something else. On a deathmatch server, you want your guns, or at least I do, to spawn in full, ready to go so they can pick it up off the ground, get into the fight, and go to it. Okay. Let me show you how we do that. Okay. And again, this maybe you just want to use that feature in your server, not for a deathmatch. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to go into this file here, the CFG spawnable types, and I've already done this. So let me get to this version, CFG spawnable types. And I covered this in another video, but let me just show you this top line in your CFG spawnable types. That's telling us the amount of damage to an item when it spawns into the game. So sometimes if you pick up an item on your server and it's damaged or badly damaged, that's controlled by this. So for a deathmatch server, I always set these to 0.01 as the minimum and the maximum is 2. And now those items are all going to spawn in pristine. Okay. Now, all of this here means nothing to us for our deathmatch. All of these items. We actually want to go ahead and delete these. Okay. So we're going to go down to where we start seeing the weapons because that's what's important to us. And there we go. Weapons right here. So we want to go ahead and literally select all of this and just delete it. We want to leave in that line though for damage because we still want all of our, we don't want to delete that line. So we're going to select all of this up to that line where we saw where we changed the items to spawn in pristine. We're going to delete that. Okay. And then we're going to go down below the weapons category and delete all of the stuff below it, all of the vehicles, everything. And what we're going to end up with. Well, actually, you know what? I better not do that. Let's do. Let me get back in there actually. I shouldn't have done that. Okay, let's get back to that. All right. And I've already done this, so I'm not racing too much. Now let's just get down to where it says weapons, and then I'm going to pop over to my completed one for you. There we go. Okay, so we see here in the weapons, let's just go to one of the guns that we're actually going to use. So the FNX 45. Okay. So here is our FX45. This is what we're using. And you'll see here, it's got attachments. And then next to that, attachment chance with a number. And then below the item name, that's the attachment that it's calling, is the magazine, FNX45 15 round. Now, what this number is right here is the percentage of the chance that it has to spawn in with that item in it. So, in other words, there's a 10% chance that this gun spawns with a clip attached to it. Now, if we want these spawning in full, all we do is we're going to turn that. You can just put 1 if you want. I don't know why, but I always just put 1.00. But as long as you put 1 or 1.00, that means now there is a 100% chance that this is going to spawn in with a magazine. And then same thing down here, a suppressor. Right now it's got a 0.05% chance that it spawns in with a suppressor attached. We put that. That means now it's going to have a suppressor, a pistol light. Okay, there's a 100% chance. And then one of the little pistol optics, 100% chance. So now what that means is our FX45 is going to spawn in complete. It's going to have all of these items. I'm going to show you how to put a battery in these too, which is pretty cool, in just a minute. So let's pop over. And so basically what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go through all of your guns that you selected for your deathmatch server, and you're going to want to put those at 100. Now, you're going to see some of these where it's got an attachment like for scopes, and it's got several different scopes. You can put 100, and that means there's a 100% chance that it spawns with one of these scopes. But maybe you want to put just one scope in particular, like the ACOG. Just delete these other ones. Leave just the ACOG. Put that at 1. And then put this one up top at 1. And now every time that gun is going to spawn with that scope. But maybe you want a chance that it spawns with, a couple different scopes. Put that down below, but don't put this at 1 if you've got more than one item selected. If you've got 2, put 50%. So it spawns, there's a 50% chance that one of these items will spawn. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. And then you can leave all these other selections in, or you can delete them. For me, what I do is I put just the guns that I'm using in, and I delete everything else. Okay, so now let's get over into the completed version and show you what that looks like when it's all done. And then I'm going to show you some other tips and tricks in that. So let's get into completed. And there it is. Okay, so here's my completed. And again, I've gone the extra mile here, and I have selected some tabs for it. And now we'll get to this in a second, but I've done some customizing here too for these other items. I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Let's go down to the weapons. Now, one thing I forgot is our Tundras are spawning in the black version, so we want to make sure that this matches. So we want to put that black in there. And again, this is, if you're doing the colored variants of any guns, make sure that you put an entry in the spawnable types with that color version. Otherwise, it will spawn in totally empty. The gun will not have anything attached to it. So remember, we have the Tundras spawning in. I put a 100% chance that it spawns in with a hunting optic. That's the only attachment it takes. You could add a improvised suppressor if you wanted. I never do, but you could. And then down here, the FX45. Now, here's a cool tip. If you want these to spawn with a battery, what you do is below that, you're going to have to type in a custom line. But what I do is I just simply copy this and paste it below, and then change the name to battery 9-volt. And now the light's going to spawn in with a battery, and so is our optic. So pretty cool. So you would do that for any of your scopes that come with a battery. So just remember this right here, take a picture of it, screenshot, whatever, and put this entry below any items in your guns that need a battery, and now it will spawn in full with a battery. Okay, so bear that in mind. So see down here, we've got a Cobra optic for the AK-101. I put a battery in that as well. So hot tip there for you. Okay, so, and then, yeah, like with the M4, I've just decided that I just want these as my handguards. You'll see in the vanilla, it's got a couple different options. I just picked these and just went with it. And so now, so for a military belt, I like, in my deathmatch servers, I like the military belt to spawn in fully equipped, ready to go, so someone can pick it up off the ground. And it's already got a sheath in it with a knife and a canteen and a deagle and a holster. And so it's ready to go. So how you do that is, again, you're going to have to create these custom categories. You can copy paste it from one of the other items. And then you just put, maybe you don't want a combat knife, you want a hunting knife, you just change that to hunting knife. and then plate carriers. And I think I have these on our Discord, but you can find them all over the internet. You'll actually find files that have these already pre-modded for you, so you would just copy paste it in. In fact, I think that might be where I got these ones. This one I made for the Gorka helmets and the Gorka helmet black. I put attachment, and then I put the visor. This is pretty cool. That means these are going to spawn in now to the game with a visor. You can do this with a lot of different items that would come with attachments. You can customize those, and so at any rate, if you're doing a Gorka, or if you're going to add the Gorka helmet to your deathmatch, you can use this line of code here for that to spawn in now with a visor attached to it, and it's ready to go. Okay, so that's it for the spawnable types. You'll see here that I deleted everything else because we don't need it. And so your items may look different because maybe you want different guns in the game. Hopefully that gives you enough information to work with to get yours set up. So that's all for the spawnable types. So to quickly recap, we've now got our types set up, the items that we've got spawning into the game. We have called the buildings that we're going to spawn them to. And then we have in the spawnable types, we have set them up the way that we want them to look when they spawn in, full with clips, what scope, so on and so forth. So now our deathmatch is basically ready to go, but there's a couple other things, right? What about zombies? What about cars? What about wolves? What about all of those things? Now you need to do something else in your events file for your deathmatch, okay? And basically, you need to turn off all of the events in the game, like zombies. For instance, you need to turn off um, the gas strikes, and I mean, unless you want them striking, and then you could spawn an NBC gear, whatever. For this one, we're going to be turning that off. So all you would do is you would open up your events. And I'm not going to worry as much about like the hens and the pigs and the bear or cows, but how you do that in the events file, there's this line right here, active, and you'll see there's a 1 there. If you set that to 0, it turns that off and it will no longer spawn into the game. So for instance, like some of these events that are in that, so zombies here, infected village. Right now, if I were to set that to 0, these zombies will no longer spawn into the game. So that's another trick for you. If you want to turn zombies or specific zombies off on your server, just turn them off here in the events file, setting it to 0. Okay. So heli crash, we're going to turn those off. And then, so we would set that to 0. So contaminated areas. So these are your gas strikes. See how it's set to 1? We're going to set that to 0, and now they're turned off. So what I've done in my completed file is I've literally gone through and just turned every single event off in the whole game. So now there are no events taking place. I mean, again, except for like the hens and stuff. They're all set to 0. All of the zombies are set to 0. Yeah, infected army, they're all set to 0. So no zombies. I turned all the vehicles off, all of that stuff. It's also going to reduce CPU usage and output so that, we are modding a bunch of guns into the game here. And so anything we can do to kind of help minimize that. Okay. So now we're set, ready to go. You could load these files in as is, and you would have a deathmatch server. But you'll notice some of the deathmatch games that you play, if you log out and you log back in, you start as a fresh spawn. Why is that? How is that? Or after a server restart, everybody goes back to a fresh spawn. How do we do that? I like to do that. Some people don't like to do that. So if you want to be able to log out and then log back in, and you've still got your kit, you've still got your gear and your sniping posts that you have secured, then don't worry about this next step. For me, I like to, for a realistic deathmatch server, if somebody logs out, I want them to spawn back in fresh. They're not going to have the 20 LARs that they've been stockpiling. They're going to start as a new spawn. So that is done by the economy file found in the DB. And Let's see. Have I? Oh, no, I have not. Okay, so this is what we're going to look at. So down here at the bottom, player, um, save. So this is telling us. So for instance, dynamic. So that's going to be like tents or any player placed items. If it says save and it's got a 1, that means it's turned on. So for instance, on our deathmatch server, if somebody sets up a tent, restart happens, that tent is still going to be there. I don't want that. We don't have tents spawning in, but just in case somebody runs off the map and finds a random tent that happens to be laying around, I always turn that to 0. That means it will not save. After every restart, that stuff is going to disappear. Animals and zombies are already set to 0. Vehicles, we don't have any vehicles spawning in. You could set that to 0 if you want, doesn't matter. The one that we're concerned about here is player. If you want, every time somebody logs out or server restart, you want players to start fresh, you're going to set that to 0. That's exactly how I like to have it. So I set that to 0, save that, and now players will start in fresh. It will be a real, true deathmatch feel every time. Okay, so that's how you do that. Now, one other file to modify here in this, well, actually two more. We need to set up our custom player spawns in the globals. Now, for a death match, I like people to be able to get right into the action or log right out of the action, and that is found here in the globals. You'll look down here toward the bottom. Time login 15 seconds is our default. Time log out 15 seconds. I like to set time login to 1, so people pop right into the action. Personally, I like the log out to be 5 seconds. I don't necessarily love people being able to just log out and then log back in if they're getting, pinned down. So at least 5 seconds. They have to sit on the map and hope and pray that nobody guns them down while they're waiting. So, okay. A couple other things that we can do here in this. In a deathmatch server, you don't necessarily want dead bodies laying around on the map for 45 minutes. So there's this item right up here, clean up lifetime dead player. The value is 3,600. Now that's in seconds. So 3,600 seconds is how long a dead body in the vanilla version lays on the map until it finally spawns away. So we want to set that to 1 so that after 1 second, if nobody's near it, boom, it spawns away. We can set this to 1 for infected and dead animal. They're not spawning in. So um, clean up avoidance. That is the amount of meters. So if somebody is within 100 meters to a dead body, it will not spawn away. I like to lower that to 10 so that if somebody gets, shoots somebody, they run a few meters away after 1 second, body spawns away. So lower that to 10. Animal max count, we don't have any animals spawning in, so set this to 0. You don't have to mess with that one, but I always do. Again, I like to just, we don't have dead zombies, so we can set that to 0. And these will help food decay. We'll turn food decay off. Most players won't be alive long enough for it to start rotting, but hey, we'll turn it off just so that it's turned off. Some other things that we could do in here, but for the sake of this and simplicity, we're going to leave it to that. So the most important ones are this time login and then the cleanup item dead player. Oh, the other thing is cleanup lifetime ruined. So these are for ruined items. If some jerk pops into your deathmatch server and starts shooting up all of the guns so nobody else can pick them up, I like to put cleanup lifetime at 1 so those will spawn away and new items will spawn in. So there you have it. We're going to save that. I've already got it saved, so we won't worry about it. And there you go. So those are your settings for economy and globals for a deathmatch server. Okay. Last item here is player spawn points, and I think I'm going to just briefly glance over this because I've done a video already on how to set custom player spawn points. And so we're going to open that CFG, and here are all of the spawn points in vanilla for fresh spawns. for new spawns. So if you're a new spawn, see down here below, we see fresh. So these are all of the possible spawn points in the game. Now, what I like to do is we just go in and delete all, but for this, we'll just do 8. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think that's 8. I'm going to delete that. And now we're going to replace these coordinates with our trusty I survive coordinates. And I've already done this. So again, the way you would do this is you go into that, wherever you're doing your deathmatch, we are in Gorka. So we're going to zoom in on Gorka, and we're going to, and I'll just do one of these to show you how we do it. So we'll put right here in this area by all the barns, we're going to say Control C. You see that little flash of white down at the bottom here? That shows that it was in fact copied. And now we're going to go into our player spawns, and we're going to paste that, and that is our Z and X. So we want to cut the X out, backspace to the number, and then now we want to paste our Z coordinate there. So there, now we've got a spawn point. And then you want to go in, and when you pick where your spawns go, maybe you want more than just 8. This is a smaller area, so I just want 8. So you're just going to go pick different areas and copy and paste those X and Z coordinates in there. Again, we have a full video that explains this, so I'm not going to take too much time explaining that. Just a quick tip for you, make sure that all of the punctuation here is appropriate, because if you, for instance, happen to delete that parentheses or this or any of that, number one, you'll still spawn in, but you'll spawn in the middle of the water somewhere, just some random location in the water, and you won't see land for miles. Like, what the heck? So make sure that punctuation is all there, and validate your files as always. So I'll show you what the finished version looks like of that player spawn points. There we go. So there's all 8 of my player spawns. Oops, looks like we forgot to do this one. We'll just delete that. That's fine. 7 of my player spawn points modified. And so that is that. So if you followed all that correctly, you should be able to load those files in. Your deathmatch should be working. I'm going to put this up on my last DayZ custom maps rotating or custom rotating map server, so you guys can all play that. Pop in, take a look at it, see what work we've done in these 2 videos. I will be doing a 3rd installment of this video series coming up shortly, that's going to show how you can add custom buildings, custom loot spawn points, custom loadouts, backpacks on the walls, those kind of things. It's going to be a little more in-depth coding, so we'll get that up shortly. But if you just want a cut and dry, simple, ready to go deathmatch, you should have all the information that you need here. I hope that's been helpful to you, and as always, I hope you have a wonderful day. Please like, subscribe, and check the notifications bell to receive notifications on when we post new videos. Thanks so much for watching, guys.